Jane Halton, thank you. Let's look at now. You say that Commonwealth isn't, well, I don't wish to verbal you, but service delivery is not something they do on the regular. When it comes to health, they manage budgets rather than people. So I think a lot of us are now looking at the vaccine rollout in Australia and saying, why have we done under 1 million people when hundreds of other countries, or at least 100 other countries, have seemed to have been able to roll out the vaccine far faster than we have? Do you have any explanation as to why?
Well, the short explanation at the moment is the supply of vaccine, and I think we all need to understand that. If you think about it, we're all waiting for CSL to ramp up to 1 million doses a week. We've all heard the stories about the difficulty of getting vaccines exported from many of these countries. One of my other hats is to chair the global mechanism to deliver vaccines to low to middle income countries, and we are struggling even to get those vaccines that we have bought out of countries like India, and we certainly can't get any out of Europe. So I think we need to understand that everybody in the world at the moment wants vaccines, and there aren't enough of them. We're really lucky that we can make them on shore. And yes, I'd like to see them rolled out more quickly. Everybody would. But in truth, we can roll them out as fast as we can make them. And that's what we're doing.
700,000 vaccines seem to have been secretly delivered from the UK. It looks like we're scrambling to get what we can. Is that true, that they were kind of delivered without a song and dance so that Europe didn't kick up a stink?
Yes, well, I mean, I think we all know that the UK is no longer part of Europe in terms of that common market. So the UK can choose to do what it wishes. The UK, I think, has been really helpful in allowing those vaccines to be exported so we can get started on our really vulnerable populations. That's really important.
Yeah.
But I also think we need to recognise that there's really massive waves and a lot of people dying across Europe. And indeed, in England, it's only just come off the really awful peaks that we've seen.
Yeah.
The US isn't exporting much vaccine. They've just sent some to Canada and to Mexico, precisely because they've got big waves as well. So everybody wants this vaccine, and that's where being one of the 20 countries in the world that can make it puts us in a pretty good position, I think.
Well, the Prime Minister has said in recent days that perhaps an explanation as to why we've only done about 1 million shots so far is because of those early supply issues from the EU. They just didn't deliver on 3 million vaccines. But we knew of these problems back in January. We knew the EU was putting in export controls then. What did we do in January to potentially mitigate those supply chain issues that was obvious to everyone that they were coming?
Yeah, well, what we did was double down on working with the CSL to make sure that they could actually make this vaccine.
But did they expedite anything?
Well, I think, yes, they have done. I mean, it's important to remember that making vaccines is really complicated. And certainly in the case of the AstraZeneca CSL vaccine that we're going to have tens of millions of doses of, it's a biological process. It's not chemistry. And therefore, we have to understand that it takes time to do, and it takes technology transfer. And that's basically exactly what we're expecting to happen here, and that's what we're going to see the benefit of.
Well, AstraZeneca, this report overnight, the TGA is looking at it now. There's a strong association with blood clots. Does this change anything for us, do you think?
Again, let's get this in perspective. The risk of these blood clots, and it's a known risk now, is very, very, very small. And the risk of dying of COVID-19, and this is particularly the case, more risk as you get older or if you've got a comorbidity. So the risk of dying of COVID-19 is not insubstantial. And what you always do with medicines is you weigh up the risk and the reward. And what's very clear with this vaccine is the reward, the disease and death that it prevents, far outweighs that risk. And I think, as someone's observed overnight, the risk of clotting from this actually is more than outshadowed by the risk that you would get, for example, from the contraceptive pill. So we actually need to put all of these things in perspective and understand that no medicine's without risk, but we need to understand the risk. And the good thing is, because we can describe the symptoms of these clots, we can also help manage that in the very, very rare event that they occur.
Well, in the UK, for example, the government is going to give an alternative vaccine to those under 30. In Italy, they're going to give it to those aged over 60. we have put all our eggs, most of our eggs in the AstraZeneca basket. Do we not have that option because we didn't hedge our bets enough?
No, we hedged our bets. And in fact, it's important to remember that Pfizer, we're already delivering the Pfizer vaccine, and people might remember that's the one that requires really, really cold conditions, -70, to move it around and deliver it. So we've got Pfizer vaccine in the country. I think we've been getting 170,000 a week or thereabouts, and it's rising up to about 300,000 a week. I think we ordered 10 million doses, which is enough for 5 million people. We've also got orders with another vaccine that we're expecting will be successfully registered, fingers crossed. That's called Novavax.
Yes.
And so that will hopefully become available mid-year. So we have hedged our bets. We put orders, I think, with 5 in total. One of those people would remember that the University of Queensland vaccine sadly hasn't proceeded for reasons that were perfectly reasonable. So, yes, we've hedged our bets. And, yes, I'd like everyone to be able to get a vaccine right this minute. But what, again, I'd ask people to think about is if you live in many, many other countries in the world, you get almost no vaccine. Look at our friends and our family members in places like Papua New Guinea, where they have literally just got a couple of 100,000 doses, if that, and there's millions of people in that country who are really suffering from this disease. So, yes, it's really frustrating. I understand that. It will take us some weeks to do 1B. That's that group 70 plus comorbidities. But we will get there. And CSL are now ramping up that production. And yes, we know about some risks. They're very tiny, very, very tiny. So I'm feeling pretty confident about our rollout.
Do you think we might get some secret vaccines from Britain again?
That's a good question, isn't it? Look, I think actually one of the things we can expect in both Britain and the US, because they have ramped up production so significantly and they are rolling out delivery so quickly, they will go from a situation of under to oversupply. And I know that seems bizarre to even think about at this point, but those industrial machines, those factories are really pumping out this vaccine. And I think, yes, Australia could hope to get a share of that, but also let's also think about people in the low to middle income countries who also desperately need a share. So we need to think about how we share that equitably.